This is a very practical lesson, and it was kind of born out of my own experience, and sometimes God uses that when you're teaching. And so here's where I'll just start with this. I was thinking the other day that I wish my husband just cherished me a little bit more. Like, we all want that, right? And so I'm like, I just wish he cherished me a little bit more. And I felt like God said, well, what are you doing on your part to, cause him to cherish you? I'm like, well, I'm pretty fabulous, actually. I mean, what are you talking about? I think I'm pretty great as a wife. And he just kind of brought to mind some things that we've taught in the past here, some practical lessons. And so he brought to mind some specific examples of some tips we've given that could perhaps, excite your husband. And so I thought, now we'll resume the video. For those of you who didn't catch that part, I was telling the women at SOS about one of the things that I did that's going to be a list. I'm going to give a list of tips at the end of the video. You might want to hang on for the list of tips because I did one of these that is one of the most risque, erotic. Yeah, anyway. So now back to the actual lesson. It's easy after you've been married for a while to become more like roommates than lovers. Have you ever noticed that? You just fall into a routine, the kids come along, busyness, stress, work, all these different things happen, and you start to become more like roommates than lovers. But when we allow that to happen, wives start to yearn to be cherished by someone, and you can slowly over time start yearning for another man to give you attention. Men, the same kind of thing. They start to yearn for someone who will make them feel admired. And so subconsciously they're starting to be drawn to a woman, maybe in the workplace or something, who makes them feel admired. Obviously, trouble lies ahead if you continue on this path. We need super glue to keep us together in marriage. And there are many kinds of super glue, but today we're going to focus on the obvious one that we've just been alluding to. So here's a Bible-based truth that reveals one powerful super glue for marriage. God intends husbands and wives to have a vibrant sex life that is not only the producer of children, but that is enjoyable, erotic, and acts as super glue for the two of you. Did you know that God intends that? Did you know that God intends that? God knows that a vibrant sex life, a robust sex life, is the glue that keeps either spouse from straying. Listen to what he says in 1 Corinthians 7. But because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. Did you notice the first words? The temptation. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So God intends for you to have a vibrant, frequent, I dare say, and maybe even exciting sex life with your husband and him with you so that you will not be tempted to stray. The Bible also makes it clear that God is on board with a husband and wife being sexually playful and even erotic with each other. I'm just going to give one example from the Song of Songs, 4:16. This is the bride talking to her groom. Think of what the picture God is painting here. Let my lover come into his garden and taste its delicious fruits. I don't know. It's a word picture to me. Maybe it's not to you. But I think God's kind of in favor of erotic sex with your spouse. God intends for a husband to so enjoy his wife's body that he's a bit giddy, a bit dazed, a bit Twitter-pated, maybe even sexually drunk, and drawn like a magnet to her. Listen to what God says in Proverbs 5, starting in verse 18. He's talking to men here, and he says, let your fountain, whatever that is, let your fountain be blessed, and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breasts fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always with her love. Wow. Intoxicated, like drunk on her. My husband was running around kind of drunk on me the last few days. And I'm like, holy cow, is that all it took is this little... Well, I won't give away what I did for those that have to watch the end of the video. Let me give you 3 reasons why sex acts as super glue in your marriage. When you have sexual intercourse with your husband, the hormone oxytocin is released, and it is actually a bonding hormone. Sometimes they call it the cuddle hormone, but it's a bonding hormone. There truly is a great sense of intimacy created when you make love with your husband. He's more likely to be strongly bonded to you and you strongly bonded to him. And part of it's just a chemical reaction when he makes love to you. Don't you want that bond to be there? Secondly, there's just nothing more vulnerable and intimate than sex between a husband and a wife. And true intimacy is always very bonding, isn't it? When you let someone in to see the deepest parts of you, when you let someone see your naked body, and you're like, oh my gosh. But it's like very vulnerable, but it's also very bonding when you have that true intimacy. When you're naked, you are the most vulnerable and open. So when you invite your husband to join you in this vulnerable time, you are establishing the most intimate, close connection with him. Mark 10, starting in verse 7, Jesus says, "For this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh." So they are no longer two, but one flesh. There's this true intimacy and connection. And then also, third reason, men seem to have an instinctive desire to bring sexual pleasure to their wives. So if you allow your husband to do that, he will feel like a sexual hero, and that alone keeps him drawn to you. This kind of seems confusing to a lot of women, but almost more important, I know I'm being really blunt, I hope you guys can handle being really blunt about these things, but almost more important to him than him reaching an orgasm is for him to know that he brought you to an orgasm, that he brought you sexual fulfillment. That makes him kind of feel like a stud. And if you don't allow him regular opportunities to accomplish that mission, he will end up feeling inadequate as a man, and he will look for some other woman to validate him and make him feel admirable. So let him be your hero in the bedroom or in the car in the lowest parking lot. The man who feels like a hero to his wife is constantly drawn to her. And that's super bonding. So then I was thinking, okay, now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. A lot of us in this room have some barriers, some obstacles to overcome in order to have this vibrant sex life with our husband. And there are a lot of barriers to look at here, so let's just go through them kind of quickly and talk about some just quick ideas on how you can deal with some of these barriers. The first one, unfortunately, it's just a terrible statistic, but at least 1 out of every 3 women has been raped or sexually abused in her lives. I believe it's higher than that, and if that's your story, I can resonate with that. That is my story from my youth. Some ideas, if that is a barrier for you to have this vibrant sex life with your husband, is to see a counselor. Ask if you can be the initiator. That helped me so much for so many years, because when you're abused, you don't have any control. And so when someone's coming at you, your husband's coming at you, you can kind of feel like PTSD, like, oh my gosh, I don't have any control. But if you ask if you can be the initiator, now it feels like you are in control of your own body. Also, you can go really slow and ask your husband if he's willing to stop if you need to stop for a moment, because maybe there's been something that's triggered you. And then just certainly tell your husband triggers that he might need to avoid, because it's just too reminiscent of what happened to you. One of the things I did too for the first few years of being married to Raul is I would start to feel like almost that panic feeling, because it reminded me of sexual abuse of my past. And I would just coach my soul through that, and like, Satan, I'm not letting you take one more thing from me. By golly, I will enjoy this. But it's kind of funny how when you're like bossing your soul around, your soul kind of gets in line, like, okay then, we're going to enjoy this, and then things happen. Okay, a common reason, especially for young moms, to not be building a vibrant sex life is because you're physically exhausted, right? And here are a couple of tips. Ask your husband to help with evening responsibilities. Go to bed earlier. Cut some things out of your schedule. And even make love in the morning when you're not so tired, theoretically, unless you've been up all night with the baby. A third common reason, being emotionally drained. Again, you might need to ask your husband to help with the children so you aren't so drained. And take time to spend with the Lord every day in quiet, and give him your anxieties during that time. And I know we often say, well, I don't even have any time to be with the Lord. Yes, you do. I'm calling out that lie. Because you make time to brush your teeth. You make time to eat something. You make time to take a shower. I mean, we make time for the things that we say are necessary. Maybe this is necessary for you, to carve out 2-3 minutes with God and just say, I need to spend some quiet time with you. Fill me up. Heal the broken places in my heart. Ask God to reveal if you're carrying too many burdens and which you should be eliminating. And then give yourself permission to spend 15 minutes a day getting refreshed. Maybe twice a day, just getting refreshed. Maybe that's just having a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or whatever it might be. But give yourself permission to do that. A fourth super common reason for not building a healthy, robust sex life is there's resentment in the relationship. Boy, howdy, that'll suck the joy right out of the sex life. It's like, well, why would I want to make love to this guy that I can't even stand right now? Well, the first and obvious thing to do is to deal with those issues that are causing resentment, to actually ask God to give you the courage to address those things, to bring them up, and to work all the way through them. Work completely through the issues. I am a recovering conflict avoider. It took me so long to get this point, like 10 years. I have to work all the way through the issue that's causing resentment, have that discussion all the way through until we come to some kind of resolution or conclusion. Sometimes it's a compromise that represents both of our values, but it's like I have to work all the way through it. What if there's shame about sex? Maybe past experiences or what you've been told about sex. Ask God to forgive you for past sexual sin and believe then you are forgiven because you are. When you ask for God's forgiveness, He says, it's done, finished, you are forgiven. So don't pick up that shame again. And don't believe any lies that you may have been told that sex is bad. There are certain cultures that sort of teach this, even certain churches that lead women to believe that it's somehow bad and shameful to have sexual desire. No, it is not. And you can execute it and pursue that in marriage. And it is nothing to be ashamed about. And sometimes we engage in negative self-talk about sex, so we can stop doing that as well. Coach your soul. I've had seasons where I needed to do that, where I just didn't feel like it. Anyone else feel like that? And I've had to say, I am going to have fun. I am going to be sexy. This is going to feel great. And it's funny, when you just tell yourself that, 9 times out of 10, it just turns your whole thought pattern around. And you're like, okay then. So sometimes it's just a matter of coaching your soul. What about body insecurity? I won't even have you raise your hands because everyone probably in the room would raise their hand because none of us feels like, oh, look at this, such a prize, right? Well, something I've learned there is to just do what you can with what you've got. Do what you can with what you got, or rock what you got, one of those sayings, right? And realize that husbands long to see you naked even if you don't have a perfect body, because, hello, I'm sure, as I was cooking in the kitchen with this little nothing apron, I'm sure that wasn't, I can't even imagine how atrocious that must have looked, but it's like, husbands are drawn to seeing the naked body, so don't be ashamed of it. Carry yourself with confidence and spunk. Husbands respond to that. Be flirty and sexy. You will be sexy to him when you're flirty and sexy, when you act flirty and sexy. What if your husband doesn't seem interested in sex? Pray for discernment as to why. There could be multiple causes. Could be medications, could be age, could be that he's viewing pornography and satisfying himself. It could be a number of different reasons. So pray for discernment and then seek the right timing to gently bring up that conversation. And realize, again, it could be medication, stress, fatigue, resentment, age, any of those things. And once you figure out what it could be, address the issue with him with compassion. What if your sex drive is low? You could go to the doctor, get some blood work done. Sometimes there's something, medical that we need to look at. But often it isn't that we have a low sex drive. It's one of these other things that I'm talking about here that's playing a role. What if your husband doesn't know how to warm you up sexually? What if he doesn't know how to do that or doesn't seem to care? Well, tell him, because he's not a mind reader. Guys don't know what women need or want. Maybe you need music, maybe you need candles, maybe you need certain touches. Well, let him know. It's like a gift to him to just tell him what you need. What if your husband says things or does things that turn you off? Again, you're going to have to tell him because he's not a mind reader, but do it gently. Tell him what you do find attractive or what does turn you on, and then I've already spoken to my husband. I've just learned to just let it all hang out. Maybe it's my age or something, but I'm just saying how it is. So there's something that really bugged me, so I've just said, you know what? If you want to make love to this, you're going to do that. And he's like, okay. And so he's on it. Like, all right. But it's like, you might as well just get it out there. Because he isn't a mind reader. He does not know unless you tell him. What if the problem is that you don't know how to get yourself interested in sex? Well, women often get in the mood by thinking. about sex. So maybe read the Song of Songs in the Bible, or there's a book called Sheet Music that is written by a Christian author that will definitely probably get you in the mood. But think about it ahead of time. There was a woman who attended Squadron of Sisters who wrote, I think, TAS on her calendar periodically, and it was think about sex. And it was like her thing to just remember, like, oh yeah. And it's funny how we start thinking about it. It's like, oh, now I'm prepared. Now I'm in the mood. So decide early in the day that you're going to have sex and then start planning, and then put on something that makes you feel sexy. What if sex is painful or uncomfortable? Well, first of all, tell your husband if he's doing something uncomfortable, ask him to do something else. But see a doctor. Sometimes there's something medical going on. Sometimes you just need to relax and coach your soul, and of course praying for healing too. What if your husband pressures you to engage in perverse sex acts? And that happens more and more these days because so many men have been exposed to pornography and they see all sorts of things there, and then they want you to do the same thing. Again, I would just have that conversation and say, I want to have a fantastic sex life with you, but I won't do this and this, whatever those things are. Tell him that he doesn't want you to feel uncomfortable. Two more things to go over in terms of challenges that are common. You might have difficulty reaching orgasm. This is super common. So I just want to let you know that. Super common. I still remember this one young lady that came to me, and she was like, we've been married for 5 years, and I haven't had an orgasm, and I'm thinking I got to have a surgery, the doctor's got to fix me. And it turned out that she thought she was supposed to have an orgasm every time she had intercourse with no foreplay. And I'm like, wrong. So I know this is really blunt. Can you guys handle that this is so blunt? But you know what? If I don't tell you, you're not going to know about these things. Well, maybe you are. Anyway, did you know it's totally normal for women not to have an orgasm simply through intercourse? That's like the norm. Usually there needs to be some other kind of stimulation with the hand or oral sex or something like that. So that is totally normal, and you might need to do some experiments with your husband and see what works. And our last common challenge, you're too stressed to relax and enjoy sex. So again, this might be a time to sit down with your husband who wants to have a great sex life with you and say, can we brainstorm some ideas on how to reduce my stress? This lesson would not be complete without talking about boundaries on your sex life to keep it vibrant, but just also healthy and within God's framework. Again, it's okay to be playful and erotic with your husband, but be careful that you don't travel outside the boundaries of what God intends for sex. Hebrews 13:4, marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexually immoral. And then Ephesians 5:3, among you there must not even be a hint of sexual immorality or of any kind of impurity. So some things that I would be careful about would be watching pornography. Sometimes husbands will say, well, if we watch it together, it's fine. But really, you're creating a situation where you're lusting over a third party, and there shouldn't be a third party in your marriage. Involving anyone else in your sex life is involving a third party, and that should not happen either. And then doing anything where you or your spouse feels uncomfortable or degraded, not okay. We're supposed to love and respect each other, so doing something that is degrading or humiliating to either one of you, not okay. All that being said, now it's time for me to blitz through my list of 25 ideas to keep your husband slightly off kilter, intoxicated with you, a little Twitter-pated, a little giddy, a little dazed, sexually drunk. Okay, here we go. And, of course, super glued to you. So, in no particular order, recreate your wedding night. Slipping off the dress or whatever, recreate your wedding night. By the way, I have not done all these things. Some of these are other people's ideas, so just don't be imagining me doing all these things. Okay, I won't tell you which ideas I've done, but I have not done all these things. Wanted to say that, okay. Put strawberries and whipped cream on your body or his body, or chocolate sauce, and then, yeah, you can imagine. Okay, blindfold your husband, use a feather very, very slowly. Give your husband a candlelight massage with yummy smelling oils. Use candles in the bedroom that smell like cinnamon. Cinnamon is known to be like an aphrodisiac for men. Isn't that weird? Maybe that's why they like apple pie or something. Flirt with your husband. That's so easy. Just flirt with your husband. Touch your husband a lot. Are you affectionate touching him a lot? Buy a new red nightie. Most men think red is sexy. But you gotta find out what your guy likes, because everyone's different. Wear one of his dress shirts with nothing underneath with a pair of your highest heels. Read the Song of Songs together out loud. Or read Kevin Leeman's sheet music book out loud. Raul and I read that once when we were taking a long drive. I was reading it out loud, and boy, we could not wait to stop that car. Just saying. Write your husband a love letter or a poem on one sheet of paper, and then glue it into thin cardboard and cut it out like puzzle pieces, and then mail that to him at work. And he opens it up and says, ooh. Went out together in public, wink at your husband across the room. How easy is that? How easy is that? It takes literally a half a second, and yet he's like, ooh, she wants me. Leave a single red rose with a little note on his car windshield while he's at work. Meet him after work for dinner at a restaurant wearing nothing under your long coat at all, but then let him know in the middle of dinner, I have nothing under this coat. Write your plans for him that evening with lipstick or soap on his bathroom mirror. Send the kids to Grandma's house and leave a trail of tea lights leading to the bedroom when he comes home from work. Play strip poker with him. I did do that. It was so fun. Okay, anyway. Why did I just say that? Okay, no. Make your bedroom more romantic and less utilitarian and messy. Pick it up, keep it tidy, add candles, add music, add beautiful artwork that he likes, maybe put some string lights in there, whatever you can to make it look more romantic. Make love in different locations. Hello. Like let's say you make love in the walk-in closet. He will be thinking of you every time he goes in the walk-in closet. In a good way. Turn down the lights in the living room, put on some slow dancing music, dance together. Buy a package of cheap Valentine notes, like the kids give each other on Valentine's Day, and write a little message on each one of them, maybe a little erotic message, and then hide them all over in his sock drawer, in his underwear drawer, wherever, and then he'll find them for weeks to come. Have a candlelight picnic in your bedroom and feed each other. Put a large mirror strategically in your room. And the last one, get a babysitter for the kids, wear nothing but a little apron and some stilettos when he comes home after work as you're cooking dinner in the kitchen, unembarrassed, maybe a little embarrassed, but just spend a half hour cooking in the kitchen. Say, no, don't touch, we've got to get the dinner ready first. I'm just telling you, there will be some buildup of, stuff going on there. There you go. Well, do we all survive this? Are you all they're all everyone here is dazed. What is she going to say next? But you know what? We have to have healthy marriages. For those in the room who are married, we have to have healthy marriages, right? If we don't have a healthy marriage, if we don't have the glue that keeps us bound together, what's going to happen? We're going to fall apart, and that's not good for anybody. So let's do what we can to keep our marriages glued together, and this is one of the means of doing that.